Welcome back to WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. 215-204-9449 is the number. My next guest is the 1992 Heisman Trophy winner for the University of Miami, and that is Gino Torretta. Gino, Zach Gelb here, Temple Sports Hour. How are you?
I'm doing good, Zach. How you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on. Temple lost their head coach last night as Steve Adazio bolts to BC. Reaction to Adazio leaving Temple?
Well, I think that it was a crazy day yesterday. All the movement, and it seems that National Football Foundation dinner where all the ADs are together and all the coaches are around. They can go behind some doors at the Waldorf Astoria and get some deals accomplished. But I think that obviously he's had success down in Florida, and then had success in Temple, and then he's moving on to the ACC in Boston College.
One of the most surprising moves actually occurred this morning with Mario Cristobal from FIU. He turned down the job to go to Rutgers, turned down a job to go to Pittsburgh, and then he gets fired this morning.
Well, yeah, that's got to be an issue. I was recruited with Mario. We played together at Miami, and he was a hot name last year. Decided not to go anywhere. And my assumption, my first take would be he probably interviewed or is interviewing somewhere else, and the AD, Pete Garcia, did not like that after he gave him an extension last year, and fired him on the spot. And I can tell you this, being down here in Miami, it's probably going to get pretty messy because there's a lot of people unhappy about it that are big FIU boosters.
Three names that come to mind for this next Temple job is Mark D'Onofrio. He's one. He's now at Miami. You could also look at Matt Rule, who's with the Giants right now, and even maybe you could throw Cristobal on that list.
Well, yeah, and what, I know two of the three. Obviously, I played with Mario, played against Mark D'Onofrio, and he's our DC now down here at Miami. And it's just amazing the movement that we've seen. And I think I've said this before, is when I played, it was you hired a head coach, you got his whole staff. Now it seems like you hire a head coach, and it's he kind of puts together a fractured group when he gets to town. So I'm sure some guys are going to be successful and some guys aren't.
You look at what D'Onofrio did this year. His defense did struggle. Do you think the Canes are losing that swagger on defense that you were accustomed to when you were playing there winning the Heisman Trophy?
No, I don't think it's losing the swagger. I think they're very thin on defense. I think they're, we had a 237-pound defensive end this year on one side, and I think we were averaging about 50 pounds less than Florida State's offensive line when we played them. So, I think that, we just lack of recruiting, had some guys leave, school early, 2 defensive linemen last year to the NFL, and I think they were just awfully thin up front, which made our whole defense struggle.
We're talking to Gino Torretta, Heisman Trophy winner in 1992. I'll be in New York covering the Heisman this year. We've heard who the finalists were. They were announced on Monday. Gino, in 1992, take me to those emotions before the announcement and once you felt when you were on the podium making that acceptance speech.
Well, I can tell you this. The night before, I was in Kentucky for the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award, and I went to bed, and there was an ice storm, as we all know, through the Northeast, and every airport in New York was closed. So I went to bed, and NBC had scheduled me to go into a studio into Louisville, Kentucky, and do the presentation there. So I was woke up about 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, something like that, and they said, Newark's open. We got to get to the airport now to get on the first flight out of here. They got us tickets. So I got to New York. We know what a mess that is, flying through storms, and got to the old downtown athletic club. There wasn't an ounce of hot water. Took a free shower and ran down came back down to the elevator, and basically I was up on stage and sitting there waiting, and the Dolphins and the Bills were playing, because this was the announcement was between the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock game. And or maybe it was after the 4 o'clock game, but the Dolphins-Bills game went overtime. So Marshall Falk, Garrison Hurst, and myself are all sitting there, and then the game goes overtime, so we got to sit there longer. So it was, I was prepared to be the winner. I didn't know what to really expect. I prepared some words of thanks that if I was fortunate enough to win, and when they call your name, I think you're kind of in shock, and you don't want to mess up when you're thanking everybody on the podium.
You know, they have like 5 different award ceremonies throughout that whole week. I know Manti Te'o had 5 award ceremonies in the last 7 days. You were all over the country before you won the Heisman, and also you were preparing for a national championship game. Were you able to appreciate winning the Heisman at the time when you did it?
You know, as much as now, probably not. I mean, obviously, you're getting pushed and pulled and dragged wherever, you know, you have no say in the matter. I mean, obviously now when I go to New York, if somebody needs me and I feel I'd rather go to a Broadway play with my family than I'm going to the show or something like that. And I think that what they've done is they've done a good job. At least Friday night now, they take the guys around on a tour of the bus, see the tree, and go up the Rockefeller Center. And I think that's a way for the 3 finalists this year to get to know each other and kind of associate and meet, you know, some of the past winners and things like that. So I think they do a better job now of hopefully kind of showing those guys a little bit around in New York and just letting them be kids.
Te'o was the only finalist this year to be in the national championship game. How much did getting to that national championship game in 1992 help your cause for the Heisman?
Well, I think obviously as a quarterback, wins and losses mean more than any other position, and I think that you know, it definitely helps when you can stay undefeated. Now it's 26-1 at the time, and it definitely helps staying undefeated, especially when you're the QB.
This Manti Te'o story, though, is absolutely incredible. This year he loses his grandmother and his girlfriend within the span of 24 hours, still finds a way to bring some exuberance to the fans inside the stadium, and he's been one of the best defensive players in the country.
No question. No question. And really one of the reasons that, obviously, they're a major reason they're in the national championship game. I mean, Brian Kelly, I think, is one of the best coaches in college football right now. He knew he'd have a young quarterback, didn't want to put a lot of pressure on him, wanted to, you know, take some time off the clock, pound the ball on the ground, and put the game on his defense shoulders. And Te'o has come up big all season, big time with his interceptions and that, and is a major reason that they're in a championship game.
Is he the best defensive player in the country, in your opinion?
He's one of him, and I think him and Clowney. I think you could probably, if you and I were either general managers, I think that either one of those 2 guys would make us happy for the next decade in the NFL.
We're talking to Gino Torretta, who does a phenomenal job for Sirius XM Radio, talking college football, won the Heisman Trophy at 1992 with the University of Miami. And Gino, let's get to the quarterback position now. The most ludicrous thing to me is that people are saying the reason Johnny Manziel won't win this award is because he's a freshman. If he's good enough to win it, he should win it, and I think he will.
Well, there's no question. You know, people ask me, well, what about he's a freshman? I don't really care. I mean, he's a second-year player, and, you know, back when Herschel Walker played and guys played, freshmen couldn't play. So that was the reason why you haven't had a freshman win, is like a first-year player couldn't even play because of the rules. Now they can play, and this kid is, you know, a redshirt freshman, so he's been in the system, you know, a couple years, and you know, he's just had a phenomenal year. And, you know, it's, I would say it'd be disappointing that if somebody takes class into account, if they truly think he's the most outstanding player this year, because you and I both know you can't duplicate seasons. And I think that, you know, when Tim Tebow won, you know, as a sophomore, and then he didn't match his numbers his junior or senior year, everybody was acting like he had an off year. Well, he didn't have an off year. He had a Heisman season his sophomore year. It was 50-plus touchdowns, and he never matched that. So just because his bar was so high for himself doesn't mean he's not the most outstanding player in subsequent years. So I think that, you know, he's had a great year. I think there's a couple guys I'm a little disappointed that also aren't in New York that had a great season. I thought Braxton Miller was unfairly punished because Ohio State's on probation. I thought he had a great year. I think Clowney at South Carolina, one of the best defensive players in the country, and I thought Marquise Lee at USC. I think those guys are all outstanding players that they should be in New York as well.
I'm very surprised only 3 people made it to New York as well. I think it was last year we saw 5 people, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, you know, and that's the thing, is what they do is look at the votes and whether there's a drop off. They don't, you know, I don't know. I guess if a guy doesn't have a lot of votes, they don't want to bring him because if he doesn't have a chance to win. You know, my thought is you and I both know if Ohio State wasn't on probation, they were undefeated, they'd be playing down here in the BCS game
Agreed.
In Miami, and Braxton Miller would be there. So you're going to punish the kid for something that, one, he didn't do, and just because he's at a school that the NCAA punished. So, you know, it's kind of disappointing that voters don't vote who they think's the most outstanding player and not taking some of that other stuff out of consideration.
Going back to Manziel, what's the impressive part about his game? The most impressive part about his game when you view him as a quarterback?
Just a phenomenal talent. I had a chance to see him firsthand against Arkansas, where he had about 430 passing and 130 rushing, and he was out in the middle of the third quarter. The one thing that amazed me, I mean, he's very good throwing the ball, but when two players or players look like they got an angle on him in the running game and they're going to come in and hit him, I've never seen, I've seen very few guys that can accelerate to another gear, and it almost looks like video game football where two defenders crash into each other and the guy runs right through the tackle because they didn't realize how fast he was. And those are the kinds of things that are just amazing to me of what he did this season, and obviously in the best conference in football.
And you also see every single Heisman Trophy winner that wins, they always talk about that Heisman moment, and he had that going into Alabama. At the time, they were undefeated, and a freshman walked in there and won the game. That was just such an incredible performance to me.
Well, the thing to me is, if you listen to Will Muschamp, the second game of the year, the Florida head coach said, "I'm glad Texas A&M isn't on a round robin in the SEC after this because that Manziel is that good." Well, if the opposing coach is telling you that in week 2, for people not to realize he's a damn good football player until they play Alabama is kind of, is ridiculous. That's why, it's like watch all the games, enjoy all the games, and go back and really, put some time, effort into, filling out your ballot.
You see some article that I read online that he was recruited by Texas to be a safety man. So how do you mess on a player like that if you're a head coach?
Let me put it to you this way: there's a lot of stories like that. I know. Down here at Miami, we recruited Marshall Faulk to play defensive back, as did everybody else in the country. But San Diego State said that he could play running back. So that story is happens all the time. I think that there was a story. RG3 was also recruited to be a safety as well. So.
Well, were you ever recruited to be something other than a quarterback?
No.
Zach Gelb here, WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station, talking to the 1992 Heisman Trophy winner, Gino Torretta. Gino, let's look at the other quarterback that's in New York, Klein. Some people are saying that he could find a way to win the Heisman just because so many people are split between Manti Te'o and Johnny Manziel. I don't think he'll win it, but is that a valid argument?
Well, I think the argument is he had a damn good season. I mean, I think he'd probably argue that 2 bad quarters against Baylor and Kansas State's in Miami for the BCS National Championship game. And I think that he'd had a great year. I think he's more adept with his feet because he's got more touchdowns running than throwing. But very consistent over the last 2 years, and a heck of a player. And I think that it might not always look like a prototypical quarterback, but I think that look at Phillip Rivers when he was playing in college. Everybody was like, "Oh, he'll never be successful. Look how he throws." You know what I mean? It just didn't look like. I guess it's supposed to look. To me, I don't really care what it looks like. The ball gets there if the guy's scoring and they're winning games. The guy's a heck of a player.
Before we let you go, you have a vote since you did win the Heisman. Who'd you vote for? Give me your top 3.
I can't tell you that. They told me they'd take my vote if I tell anybody. And I normally don't tell anybody anyway.
Wait, are you being serious? Because Dan Patrick was on his radio show yesterday, and he was giving out his vote. Is it different if you win the Heisman than if you're just like a regular voter?
Nope. They put in there they reserve the right to take your vote if you disclose it before the winner is announced.
Well, Gino, I'll see you in New York coming up this week. I'm making my trip in on Thursday. We'll be at the events Fridays and Saturday. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate the time.
Sounds good.
We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back right after these short messages.